Hello everybody, Andy Nolch here with a Scientology Q&A. A lot of other YouTube channels do this Q&A thing, and I'm not really going to make it a permanent thing. This is probably just a once-off video because I had some questions sent to me from a university student called Mackenzie Sandor, and he's just got some questions for me, and I think this will make a great video for me to answer. And yeah, these are questions about Scientology, and I'm a Scientologist. So here we go. Other uni students, if you're doing some sort of assignment on Scientology, just watch this video and you can get answers about it. I don't know what they're studying. I was studying some sort of arts degree or studying religion or philosophy or something. Okay, so question 1. When did you first join the church? I joined in 2010. Number 2, what were your personal relationships like before joining? They weren't as good. Like, my communication level in my family wasn't as good. So it was more like I kept to myself more and I was more quiet, and couldn't express myself as well. More shy. And amongst friends, I was about 21 back in 2010, so I was socialising more, so I was communicating a lot, but I wouldn't say that my communication level was as good as it is now. Like now I feel like I can communicate better. Just like express myself better. And the funny thing about the personal relationship stuff, and family and all that, is that I've noticed that as you do Scientology and you improve, or when you do anything and you improve, people around you improve as well. So your family members, their communication level increases and improves and that sort of stuff. But they weren't involved with Scientology or anything. Only I did it in my family. Next one is 2A, and it says, what type of social groups were you a part of? I was just a normal suburban Australian 21-year-old, so I was like just middle class. I wasn't like a gothic, or I wasn't like a super duper jock sort of character, or I wasn't like a video game sort of nerd. I was just really just middle class and normal. Okay. A bit in the sort of sporty direction, although I was never really good at sport or didn't play that much of sport, but like I was sort of friends with people like that. Okay, what aspects of your life shifted after joining the church? My confidence increased and my certainty increased. I actually, after doing Scientology for a few months, I did a personality test, and that was a point that changed on the graph. It went from, like, they've got a graph or whatever, and my certainty was low, like in the bad range, below 0, and it was pretty damn low because it was like I was uncertain about things, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I just don't know about anything, because everything in life is actually, there's lots of lies going on in life, and it's a big confusion because evil people have made it that way. Okay, I'm not kidding. So evil people made it that way, so they've confused everyone. So, for example, let's just talk about Hillary Clinton, for example, where you get all these people who say Hillary's good, and then all these people who say Hillary's bad. So you just, what's your opinion of Hillary? You're like, I don't know, I just don't know. So I was kind of like, and there's a reason why, because there are people, instead of, I personally think she is corrupt, right? But there are people who are protecting her and hiding it. So the average person who doesn't really know, who doesn't have any inside information, is just like, I don't know about Hillary. And anyway, so that's just one example, but there's heaps of different areas in life where they're all sort of confusion. So for me, I was just in general, was just like, I don't know, because there's all this crap going on. It's all a big mess, basically, the world. Especially because of the media being corrupted. So after I came across Scientology, I came across some information that was just like, here it is, this is the truth, and I could trust it. So I started not being all, I started going, oh, no, I actually know stuff, you know what I mean, and being more certain about things. And my happiness as a result came up a bit because I wasn't just all like, oh, what the hell's going on? You know what I mean? I was more, my happiness came up a bit. But yeah, I definitely changed. And I also became more positive and sort of hardworking because I came across Scientology and I thought it was great and it's improving me and stuff. So I became more hardworking and more wanting to help Scientology. And I sort of felt like I'd found my people, which is kind of interesting because I sort of thought, because in life I was never really a Christian, I was never really a jock, I was never really anything. But when I came across Scientology, I sort of felt like, yeah, these are my sort of people because they're interested in philosophy, they're interested in self-improvement, they've got funky ideas, a lot of them are cool and creative. So like I just felt like, yeah, these are my people, like I really fit in and that sort of stuff. And one thing I noticed when I went into the church, I noticed that I would say something and they would just listen to me and not bag me, like not attack what I said. Because I'd noticed in life a lot of the times I would talk and I'd say something and someone would say, that's wrong, or, oh yeah, blah, 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 or some sort of negative comment attacking it. But then I noticed Scientologists, I would say something and they would go, okay, and that like they just wouldn't attack what I'd said. And it's actually something you learn in Scientology. It's like you learn to grant beingness and you learn not to evaluate. So if someone says, I like chickens, you don't go, well, chickens are bad for you to eat and blah, blah, blah. You don't attack them. You just be nice to people and you let them like chickens. So I felt like a lot in my life, a lot of the things I said had been attacked. So it was great to have these people who just listened to me and gave a nice, thank you, like a nice, oh, okay, I agree or something, or, that's good or whatever. Like they were just nice about it. And I naturally always did that. Like I always just think it's common sense. You should be nice to people and not shut them down and be rude and attack them all the time. So I did that, but other people in my environment didn't do it. So when I came across people in the church and they were doing that, I was like, hey, I like these people. I fit in amongst them. And I also liked how Scientologists see a problem and they do something about it. They don't just give up and they don't just sit around meditating all the time, not doing anything. Like if there's a problem, they say, nah, you got to do something about it. And so I like that can-do sort of attitude of, because I'm sort of like that, like with corruption and that sort of stuff. It's just like, no, I'm doing something about it. And other people tend to have the attitude of, it doesn't matter if you do something about it, like it doesn't matter if you try, you're not going to achieve anything, it's a waste of time, all these sort of negative attitudes, where Scientologists are just like, nah, you do something about it and you can solve the problem. Even if it's a really, really, really hard task, you can still do it. And one of the big things that changed in me was the first book, Scientology book I read, Dianetics. It sort of mentioned this idea that your mind can create reality or can change reality. And that really changed me because that was one of the first times I was like, wow, so I can just so our minds are powerful, I can just start thinking differently, can change reality. So that was a really cool thing that changed, and I started doing that. I noticed it started to work. It's not like I can just suddenly think and the Big Mac can pop into my hand and I can eat it, but like you can influence things with the way you think. And you get better and better as you practice it and stuff, and anyway. Next question, number 4. How do you feel about your experience with the Church of Scientology? And then the next question says easy. How do you feel about your experience with the Church of Scientology? No, I don't think it was easy. Well, maybe he's trying to ask, was it easy? No, I don't think it was easy because when you sort of get involved with it, especially in the church, you're sort of pressured into volunteering a lot, and if you're not doing any volunteering, you're pressured into doing a lot of courses. So just suddenly your diary is full doing Scientology, like either volunteering or doing courses. So it's like a big commitment, and it's a like it's it's a big hobby to take on. And if I would have gone back in time, I wouldn't have taken it on so heavily. But you're sort of new to it and you're excited and that sort of stuff, so you want to take it on pretty heavily. And also there's another element that about Scientology that's kind of hard, in that it is kind of hard to study it. Like, it's not an easy thing to study. And when you do the therapy, I wouldn't really say the therapy is easy either. So you just got to be, a bit of a can-do, positive attitude. And it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like doing karate, in that, like, it's not like it's easy to do karate. You go there, you got to take it seriously, and you got to practice and learn from the teachers and all that sort of stuff. It's that similar sort of thing. And I used to think that, I remember when I, like say a homeless person, for example, when I first got into Scientology, I thought, we could get them in and help them with Scientology. But then as I did it more, I realized that, Scientology, it's too hard for them. Like, I don't think a homeless person could get a black belt. You know what I mean? Like in karate, it's a similar sort of thing. Like, I think that, there's a saying in Scientology called, it's for the able to get more able, or something like that. Because it's just not that easy, and it's for people, like normal people, to improve, not for, a homeless person. Like, I mean, Scientology can help them, but I think it's kind of too hard for them, really. So yeah, you got to be sort of switched on and that sort of stuff. All right, next question. Do you have family or friends that are still members? I kind of do have some friends that are still members with the church, but they're kind of like disaffected. And it's not many. I never really had any family that were members of the church. I've got friends that are still Scientologists, yes, but not necessarily members of the church, because there's kind of like church members and the independents, and the independents aren't involved with the church. All right. How did being a part of Scientology affect your personality, if at all? I think it made me more positive and confident. So, you learn to be yourself, I think, more as you do Scientology. Like, I know that the church is, I'm not a church member, but the church is a bit corrupted and stuff, so you're kind of forced to be like a good church member, so you kind of don't be yourself, but at the same time, as you do more Scientology, you more become yourself. And then if you leave the church like what I did, then you really do become more yourself, because you don't have a church like telling you, like controlling you a bit, you know what I mean? You're more free. But yeah, I became more positive. I would say more energetic. More confident. Like, you actually do exercises in Scientology and stuff to give you confidence to express yourself. Whereas before I'd done Scientology, I was sort of more shy and introverted, so less willing to say my opinion of things. So I became, I think, more funky. I became more myself because I had the confidence to express myself. I became more outgoing. Okay, number 7. What motivated you to leave? I noticed that there were things not quite right in the church. I noticed that the people who were working for the church didn't really understand LRH's writings, and they had different interpretations on them. And so, like, let's say if they're a bit of a controlling sort of Nazi type person, they would read something by LRH and they would go, blah, 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 blah. See, that means I can do blah, blah, blah. And then I would read the same thing and I'll go, no, that doesn't mean you can do that. But they read LRH and they put their own spin on it, and it allows them to be the little Nazi that they are. So I just noticed that, yeah, and then of course there are situations where the person doesn't have to be a Nazi or anything, but they just read it, who works for the church, and they get a different idea, and I read it and I go, I don't think what you think about that. What are we going to have to do? Have a court case and get out lawyers? You know what I mean? Try and debate this thing. And, lots of Scientologists have this issue where you read LRH and people have different interpretations of what is written. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. But, so I kind of noticed that I didn't quite agree with, what the interpretations going on in the church. And I kind of noticed that they weren't really advertising, and they were trying to milk the members for as much money and dedication as possible, which kind of annoyed me, because I was like, let's, advertise more and get new people in instead of just trying to get so much money from the same person. Like, that person has clearly bought enough courses, and you know what I mean? Like, it was a bit too money hungry and stuff, and a bit too much hard sell and that. And anyway, so I just noticed there were things wrong, and then there was a point where I just said, that's it. I'm hitting the internet, and I'm asking people. I'm going to find out what the hell is going on with the church, because there were just things I just thought were wrong. Like I don't mean to bag people who are part of the church, but it's people who aren't that bright. They can actually not even spot what the hell is wrong with the church. But I'm the sort of person where, when it comes to governments or the media or the Church of Scientology, when I'm involved with them, I can spot things that are like, hold on, I can see, like, oh, that's kind of wrong, and what's going on there? That's a little bit strange. Like, I can pick faults in things. So, I just picked I couldn't tell in the first year of doing Scientology. It took a few years, like 5 or 6 years in total, to be able to go, hold on, there's just, it says something not quite right here. Like, for example, the people who are supposed to be like OT and really powerful spiritually and stuff, I noticed that they weren't really OT, and I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And that's just one example. And I noticed they weren't really advertising it. They were saying, yeah, let's clear the planet, which means make everyone pretty much into a Scientologist. So they're going, yeah, let's clear the planet and stuff. Yet they weren't advertising to, like, the public and stuff. They were just advertising to other Scientologists. And it's like, why are you trying to sell more books to someone who's already got Scientology books? It was just really silly. Yeah, there were just things not quite right. And so anyway, so there was a point where I just said, that's it. I'm going on the internet and I'm going to find out, like, I need to find out more information. So I asked a friend who was a church member, I said, who are these people that do Scientology but they're not involved with the church? Because I heard about these sort of squirrel people or something like that. And I thought they were just a bunch of sort of nutters that were doing Scientology, but they didn't care about the church, and they just wanted, do the higher levels. So, like, they hated how you had to wait till you could do OT5 or something, and they were just like, no, let's do OT5 now. So I just thought they were sort of like that, because that was sort of the idea that I'd got from them while being in part of the church, because the church they call them squirrels, the independents, they call them squirrels or whatever. They sort of look at them as being like that. So anyway, so I said to a friend, and he said something like free zone or whatever. And then I looked it up, and I noticed that the free zone is like Scientology, and just disagree with what was going on in the church. And they made some really good points about the screwed upness of the church. And they also, there was a lady who made a video pointing out the changes to a Scientology book, right? And that's a big no-no in Scientology. Like, if L. Ron Hubbard writes a book, or L. Ron Hubbard writes anything, you leave it. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, he's written it, and then you pass it on. It's like the Bible. Why would you want to have changes to the Bible? I want to know what the hell the Bible actually... I want the Bible the way it originally is. The same with L. Ron Hubbard's books and stuff. I want them the way they originally are. And L. Ron Hubbard specifically says it's like a really big crime in Scientology to change his writings. So I noticed that the church they re-released all the books in 2007, and they'd made these changes. And this lady in the video was saying how they've changed the books, and like that was just like, I was just like, what the hell? Like, it really annoyed me because I'd read some of by chance. See, I was lucky that when I very first came to Scientology, just in an old bookstore, I managed to come across an old version of one of the books. So, although when I was involved with the church, I thought the new versions of the books were like the corrected versions, like they were apparently, like they sold them as like there was editing mistakes or whatever. So I thought they were good, but I was aware that there were these older books that were different. And I remember this older book that I got from the bookstore. It was on New Slant on Life. I liked it, and then I also liked the new version as well. But I knew that there was a difference between the two books, and I liked the old version as well. So when I saw this video that was highlighting changes that had been made to Science of Survival, the book, I kind of like understood it because I was like, yeah, I'd read another one and I'd noticed that had changed or whatever. And so it started to make me think like, hold on, what the hell? So the church is corrupt and they're changing L. Ron Hubbard's books, like his materials. And then I found out more about David Miscavige and found out that he's actually a bad guy that stole the church basically from L. Ron Hubbard and his family. L. Ron Hubbard passed away in the 80s and his church just got stolen from him and his family by this hardcore dude, David Miscavige. But when I was involved in the church, when I was involved with the church, you don't hear about these sort of things and you don't know. And, it's all made out that David Miscavige is the perfect leader that took over from L. Ron Hubbard and that sort of stuff, and was L. Ron Hubbard made him the leader. But then you find out the truth, which was that David Miscavige just stole the leadership from L. Ron Hubbard. And that's why the church is sort of corrupted and got all these problems, because he's just doing dodgy stuff. So when I realised that David Miscavige was bad and they were changing the books to make money and that you could do Scientology outside of the church and it was better, I was just like, I'm leaving. And it wasn't too hard a decision to make because I looked at a lot of information and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be involved, and that was it. All right, number 8. Were your relationships with Scientology members affected by you leaving? Yeah, so they were. So what happened was that the people who were in charge of ethics in the church, which are kind of like Scientology police, they had contacted people on like Facebook and stuff and told them to defriend me. It told them to defriend me and stuff and not remain in comm with me. And this was even before I started making the Scientology podcast and before I even started making many videos. I just left some comments on the internet saying my experiences, and I'd left a message. I'd contacted the church because they were contacting me, like the Scientology police were trying to contact me, trying to get me in to, handle the reports that they've heard from church members had reported on me. And, I said, I'm not part of the church anymore. I'm an independent or whatever and stuff. And so they'd obviously decided to just contact people who I was friends with on Facebook and tell them to no longer be friends with me and stuff. And so they stopped calling me, the people from the church and that sort of stuff. And I think they got like a file on you in the church, like with your details and that sort of stuff. And I imagine they put like a blacklist on my file. It was like, don't send out mailings, and they kicked me out of the Scientology, like the church Facebook group. But yeah, I mean, there was some guy who I wasn't even really friends with, who they contacted like twice or even 3 times on Facebook saying defriend me. But most of the people did defriend me. Like I noticed in a period over a few months, like every day or there was more than one person defriend me and stuff. And I stopped getting calls and that. I wasn't that heavy. Like I wasn't working for a Scientologist, and I wasn't, my family weren't Scientologists, so I wasn't really heavily involved with church members. But yeah, people stopped talking to me and stuff. And there was one guy who I'd done a little bit of work with, like nothing to do with Scientology, but he was a church member. And I remember he called me about something, and he called me on a private number. And we didn't talk about the church or anything. We just talked about this other thing that he had to call me about. But like I could kind of tell that he called me on private number for like a specific reason, because he, knew he wasn't supposed to contact me, because he's not supposed to contact, because I'm, no longer a church member, and I'm, like I'm doing these naughty things on the internet and stuff. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah, so there was like an ARC break, like in Scientology it means like an upset, like like no longer my friends, and I'm sad. So there was a little bit of sadness in me from that, but not that much, to be honest. Like I knew it was better, and I had to do what I had to do, and it was my duty, you know what I mean, to leave the church and all that sort of stuff. And there's a thing in Scientology called KSW, and the reason I left the church was keeping KSW in. Like a lot of the church members think I'm sort of crazy, and that think that like I don't apply KSW at all, but they just haven't spoken to me, and they don't know that the reason I left was because I was applying KSW and the church wasn't, and so I couldn't go along with it. So I'm much more of a proper Scientologist than them. I actually apply KSW way more than they ever could, but they don't understand. They don't know, what happened to the church, and they don't know the church isn't applying KSW. So you know what I mean? So I kind of like, I haven't bumped into them on the street, but if I did and they had a go at me, I'll just be like, hey, hold on, you don't know what's going on and stuff. Like, I won't get annoyed if they get upset with me. They just don't understand what happened and why that's the case. There was a friend that called me when he was contacted and told to defriend me and no longer talk to me, because he was like a good sort of friend who was a church member. And I explained to him how the church isn't what he thinks it is, and it's sort of corrupted, and it's up to him. If he wants to find out the truth, he can find it out. And he just thought that I'd gone crazy. He was just like, the people on the internet have changed you or whatever, and you've gone crazy or whatever. And I was just like, hey, until you've looked at this information and researched it, then we can't have this discussion, because you don't know the information that I know and stuff. And I just said, like, it's not what you think it is and stuff. And he said, Scientology's been good for him and stuff. So I said, cool, then keep on doing it. But if you ever run into problems, then contact me. So if any of them ever want to leave the church and stuff, they can always contact me, and we can talk about, what's going on. But some people, have it good in the church and that, and they're so used to it, and they're so heavily involved in it, like they're involved in it because of their work and their family and their businesses and all that sort of stuff. It'll be such a big thing for them to leave, and it'll be such a massive change that they just don't do it. With me, I wasn't so massively involved in it, and also I think I'm just smarter than them, and I could spot the problems with the church more than they could, basically. So anyway. Next question is, when did you leave the church? And that was about April 2016. But that was when I officially left, but in about 2015, for most of that year, I hadn't been a heavy Scientologist. Like, I'd only been going in one day a week or one day every 2 weeks. And that's still, I know you might think that's a lot, but Scientologists usually are really heavily involved. But I'd sort of been more of a real casual one, so I was sort of half in, half out, but I was still a church member, and it was just because I was busy hosting a comedy show in Melbourne and, acting and all that sort of stuff. Like, I just had too many commitments, but I was kind of like half in, half out. So, anyway. What aspects of your life changed after leaving? I became way smarter I understood how corrupt things are in the world, basically, because I'd heard, governments were corrupt and the media is corrupt and stuff, and then I realised that even churches are like, well, yeah, I heard, you hear that the Catholic Church is corrupt or whatever, but I heard that even Scientology is corrupt, and I was just like, oh my God, everything's just corrupt, and it's kind of how things work. It's just that, there can be some things that aren't corrupt, but a lot of the time, bad guys end up just taking things over and corrupting them and using them to make a lot of money and doing dodgies and stuff, and it's just how it is. It's it's unusual for there to be a big organization that isn't corrupt. There's corruption in everywhere in life. Anyway, so I just just became a lot smarter. I think the thing I liked the most when I left the church was the fact that I wasn't concerned about what the church would think. So when I was part of the church, it was kind of like I was always worried about getting in trouble with ethics, which is like a Scientology police. So I was kind of like, worried that I'll get told off for some silly acting that I'd done, or get told off for maybe let's put it this way. So I've got the YouTube channel going at the moment and I'm making Scientology videos. Well, if I did that when I was part of the church, I would be very worried about it getting told off. Like, I couldn't sit in front of a camera and actually say my true opinions. I would always have to be more professional or not talk about risky things. But if I was involved, if I was involved with the church, I couldn't say risky things. And then next minute, I would get a report written on me and I'd have to go into HCO and they'll go, why did you say these things in this video? Like, for example, these are one of the reasons why I left, was because I did an interview on a podcast called Truth Sentinel. It's good. They covered really unusual sort of things, conspiracies and all that sort of stuff. And on the podcast, the guy asked for people who were Scientologists to contact the show because he wants to speak to them. So I contacted him and I did an interview with him for like an hour, and I was talking about my experience with the church. And this was before I found out the church was corrupt, and before this is when I was a good church member and stuff, and I was just saying how I like Scientology and blah, 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 blah. And he asked me some hard questions, and I sort of answered them and sort of didn't answer them because I couldn't. But of course, the church found out about that, right? And they'd sort of told me off. And I was just like, hey, I was being a good Scientologist by, telling people the truth about the church, and, no one else is doing it. You know what I mean? On the internet, there's just heaps of people bagging Scientology. And this is why you don't get church members on the internet making videos, making YouTube channels and stuff. Because they're worried they're going to get in trouble from the church. And so anyway, so they sort of told me off, saying, you have to ask for permission before you do an interview, and, you're not sort of supposed to do it. The official church spokesman is supposed to do it and stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, hey, I gave a good interview, what's wrong with doing it, thingo. Anyway, so those sorts of things really pissed me off, because there's me. I want to go and do shit with my life, and then you have HCO and ethics saying, no, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like a big brother hanging on your back telling you off all the time. So when you leave the church, you have this big brother, this whole weight on your shoulders, throw away, and you go, F you, I can do whatever I want. And you're much more happier and freer. And whenever you talk in front of a camera, you're not going, oh, well, am I allowed to say this? Am I allowed to say that? Oh, what if I say this? Someone in the church will report me. And you know what I mean? Like, you don't have those worries. Like, for example, right, Tom Cruise is a church member, and he jumped on a couch. He jumped on Oprah's couch. Who gives a shit? Some people in the church didn't like that and wrote a report saying Tom's behaviour is inappropriate and too crazy or whatever. That to me is absolutely insane. He gave a good interview on Oprah. It was one of the best TV interviews ever. I'm serious. He just jumped on the couch. It was just a funny thing. It was just like, I'm in love, and jumped on the couch. Who cares? Yet some people in the church go, oh, I've got to write a report. How dare he make Scientology look bad by jumping on the couch? See how ridiculous that is? So me, as a Scientologist, I would do things, right? I remember one time I posted a picture on Facebook of me in my underpants, right? It was just a silly thing. Other friends had done it, whatever, but because I'm part of the church, I was part of the church back then, The church were like, what the hell is this picture you had on your Facebook? Take it off. And like, I was just like, I don't want to put up with that crap. And so as long as the church keeps on being strict with people and trying to make them into these goody-goody Scientologists, people are just going to be leaving the church and joining the independent movement because they don't want to have that sort of crap in their lives. They just want to do whatever they want, you know? There's another friend who's going through a divorce, and he was a church member, and the church, like, got him in and were, like, trying to tell him how to handle the divorce and tell him what to do and all this sort of stuff because they were worried his divorce would affect Scientology or whatever. And it's just like, it annoyed him because it's like, hey, you know, I want to do what I want. Just leave me alone. Anyway, so the big thing is that when you leave the church, you don't have this controlling thing. And when you're an independent Scientologist, they're not these Nazis, you know what I mean? That can like control you and tell you what to do and all this sort of stuff. They just do Scientology and treat you nice. And so it's much, much, much better. And I just expanded as a person, was much, much happier. And I used to be, I guess, a bit shy and scared in general, just sort of like shy and scared. But that was one big thing that went out of me. It just sort of just threw out of me, and I was no longer scared because I was just like, hey, I just want to be myself and who cares. Number 11, how have members of the church treated you since your departure? They pretty much they do this thing called disconnect. So like they're told not to talk to me or whatever. So they just don't talk, which I kind of like. I kind of respect because I feel like other groups or religions or whatever would attack more. Whereas Scientology, it's more just like disconnect. You just, if someone's, you know, not part, like if someone's bad or like they think's bad, just disconnect. That's it. You just don't deal with them. And so, so that a lot of them disconnected. But I did get one or two attacking sort of comments on the internet just by church members who didn't know anything about what really happened to me, and they just said some nasty comments. But it was very little. And overall, yeah, they haven't spoken to me or had anything to do with me. Okay, number 12. How did you feel about your departure from the organisation? Do you know what I actually felt? I felt a little bit sad because I was sort of disconnected from those people. And, you know, there's a little bit of sadness there. Not a huge amount, because I know it just had to be that way and I wasn't that involved with them anyway. But there was a bit of sadness in me as well because I looked at what actually happened to Scientology and I saw how it was this really cool, funky, alternative, unusual religion in like the 60s and into the 70s and stuff. And then when Hubbard died and his family got kicked out, like it got really corrupted and became much more money hungry, and it was really sad because I kind of saw how the whole movement had kind of failed and the bad guys had got in control of it. So a part of me was actually sad because I was just like, oh my God, like Hubbard's creation, this really great thing just got screwed over, and it was just, there was a bit of a part of me that was sad to see how messed up it got. But, you know, I think the church is improving a little bit nowadays and stuff, but it was just sad to see how it went downhill when Hubbard left. And I think this is the last question. Do you still believe and practice any teachings or rituals? Yeah, so I believe in Scientology more than ever. And by leaving the church and finding out about the corruption in the church or what the hell went on, I understood why Scientology wasn't working. So everything made sense to me. So that was really good. It was like, oh, great, now this makes sense and that makes sense. So now, like, you know, like, so someone, for example, might be a church member and be OT, but yet not act like an OT. Now it's like, oh, now I know why they're not acting like an OT. So I had more faith in the tech because I was like, you know, if you do proper standard Scientology and you try and do it your best and you got good people involved and you don't have these Nazi HCO police guys, you know, it works and it's good, you know? So my belief in it went up much more. And also at the same time, I studied lots of other practices, so lots of other religions and philosophies, and listened to many other things like people's stories about ghosts and just all these unusual things like out-of-body experiences. And more and more and more, I noticed that the information that other people were saying was backing up what Hubbard was saying, like in the 50s and 60s. So you can read something by Hubbard, for example, where he says you can move an object with your mind, and you go, okay, cool, I've never seen that, maybe that's not true. But then when you hear tons of stories of people saying they've moved an object with their mind, and it has nothing to do with Scientology, just out there in the real world, you're suddenly like, oh yeah, Hubbard was right, and blah, 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 blah. Because, for example, Hubbard said there was a big incident that happened in the universe about 75 million years ago. A really, really big incident. And there's this guy called Richard Hogan that studies the universe and stuff, and planets and all this sort of stuff. And he says there was this big incident that happened 65 million years ago or 70 million years ago. And so I'm thinking that maybe their dates are not quite right because they can't work out the dating. It's hard to get the dating exactly accurate, but they're probably talking about the same thing. So I'm like, oh, Hubbard is bloody right about this. You know what I mean? So like, I just became much more of a Scientologist. Yeah, and I practice. I still practice. I still read a lot of Scientology and that sort of stuff. It's kind of hard to practice it because I'm doing a lot of things, and at the moment I'm doing more the study side of it as opposed to the practicing of it, which is like doing the sessions and the auditing and stuff. But yeah, I'm still totally, you can't, when you find out the truth and stuff, you sort of can't, just forget it and stop practicing it. Like, I got still clear words and all that sort of stuff. I think, I'm still a Scientologist. I'm an independent Scientologist, which means we're just not part of the whole corporate organization of the church and everything. All right, so that's it. That's the Scientology Q&A for Mackenzie Sandor. I hope you liked it. And, that's it.